Hello everyone, this is Serene Tefaha from CoVision and Advocate Me and People for Safe Vaccines. As some of you know, I have been extremely busy with a wonderful group of practitioners in setting up our own health hubs. It is critical. There are so many things happening and very many things happening quickly around us in terms of the intersection between the hospital system, whether it's private or public, with the great backing and the lobby groups that are driving the pharmacological reliance on blind reliance on medication, including vaccines. So it's not just the vaccines; it is this high drive towards an obsession that I see in our hospital system with over medication. And that is a problem that is not just isolated to COVID vaccines. It is something that has been a mania that has been developing in our health system for quite a long time. And now I feel that we've reached this peak in this mania where even choices that used to be allowed, like for example, baby Will with the blood transfusion, that even the blood banks in New Zealand and here in Australia will refuse to allow you to have a direct blood transfusion with a family member, let's say, and or giving the blood to the blood bank for filtering and testing, and then e-marking it for the person that you want. They're refusing that when they can easily accommodate for that. And this is a crisis, a real crisis. And this is why our CoVision health hubs are so critical, because we need to come up with research and we need to come up with solutions when we are confronted with this, nothing else I could say except this blind cult of over medication. It's a blind cult of over medication that has come and spawned from a very long history of eugenics and the development of Western medical science and enterprise. Institutions that are heavily built on the testing around vulnerable children who were considered as feeble-minded, disabled children. That was happening for over 150 years, right? Now we all feel upset about this and we think this is the worst thing that's happened, but it's not. The development of Western medicine has been quite of a cult and quite of an of the most heinous experiments, when you think that they used to feed children feces laced with hepatitis B, and that was a common experiment that was used in America and Australia and other places. So please don't think that COVID-19 experimental mRNA vaccines is the worst thing that's happened in humanity. It is just now that it is the biggest in terms that everyone is being used, including healthy subjects, or now categorized as healthy subjects, even though children that were locked up in mental health wards, in asylums, women in asylums, prisoners in prison centers, that was a very common thing for them to be experimented on with various drugs and medications, except that now it's become the go-to. It's become the thing that's common practice in most hospitals that we get experimented on. And this is where this blind this blind allegiance to this model that has been usurped by pharmacological madness, I call it. And this is why it's so important. As you know, I've been spearheading the case of Vicky Jarkassian in relation to the Alfred Hospital. We've seen it with blood transfusions, and now we also see it with organ transplants, solid organ transplants, with his lung, liver, kidney, and of course the heart. So this is the heart transplant case is in relation to the Alfred Hospital decision. Top cardiologists in the country unanimously is saying that you must have the COVID vaccine before getting a heart transplant, even though they're very well aware of the rare adverse side events that impact both the heart and the blood. And yet there is this blind conscription to all medication being treated in the equal manner. And this is where it becomes completely illogical. right? It becomes completely illogical, because once you're trying to negotiate with logic and rationale thinking, but there is this blind conscription towards this the cult of the medicine. And this cult, I say it I use their body language. This cult is so deeply um, dogmatic, deeply dogmatic, and it becomes really hard to deal with the rational, even though the governments have said there's all these rare side effects, even though we know that there's all these that it's not a fully approved vaccine, even though we know all of these things and they are saying to us and communicating these things. There is almost a logical disconnect when it comes to promoting something versus mandating it. And what I wanted to say also is that we've now seen this being echoed across the world. And so Vicky has a very serious case of cardiomyopathy, dilated cardiomyopathy, whereby both her left and right ventricles are experiencing serious heart failure. A beautiful mother of 2 children, with a committed husband, and completely compliant in every other way to the hospital standards that the cardiologists have set for her and the surgeons have set for her. And yet she is being denied the continuation of her consideration for a heart transplant because she won't take what she sees, and rightly so, a risk for her particular group. And furthermore, we've seen this situation echo across the world now, and I've attached it in the link below. There is a number of cases that have simultaneously come about globally, with a young lady, 14-year-old girl, gets rejected from having a life-saving surgery, again a transplant, an organ transplant, which is horrific. And then with a kidney, she's denied a kidney, and then of course with another case where again the judge in Canada, Alberta, basically decides that they will not intervene. They will not intervene with hospital decisions. Now, what is so important here is that this ubiquitous presence of these big pharmacological companies, they have completely usurped both private and public health, and fundamentally one of the biggest killers is over medication, or the wrong medications. And yet the doctors so blindly are no longer practicing medicine. In fact, they're practicing the pharmacological medicine of the day. Okay, so if yesterday we liked one medicine and we all say yes, and we all say yes to that, if today we say this medicine we don't like, now we're going to like something else, and all of the doctors will repeat this mantra. And it is complete cult. I mean, that's exactly what happens in a cult. So I'm just taken aback by that level, especially when I'm reading all these cases, and it is exactly the same pattern. And as you know as well, with Baby Will, in Australia, even if you earmarked, as I was saying earlier, even if you earmarked a particular donor, the blood banks will refuse to provide that. We are in a confounding scenario where choices that we had in medicine are no longer there or available for us. So even when we interacted in the hospital systems, we sort of still had some agency in what decisions we can make. But right now we don't. And what ends up happening too is if you say no during that process, they can bring in the psychiatrists, and then you will find that your guardianship is removed. If you're dealing with children or elderly, you could find yourself being targeted by police, by child protection. It is horrific, the implications of what we are facing with the current modus operandi with most hospitals, private or public. So that is why I've made this video today, because we're steady on. We will fight these cases in the courts, obviously, and anyone who has a transplant issue or a blood issue, please get in contact with me. I am looking at the legal aspect of this as well. So 0425754299. Through CoVision. You can contact me because we streamlined the evidence and the expert evidence in these cases, and I'm working really hard, and there are a number of cases that could be set as precedents here, and I'm very proud of Vicky and her taking the stand, but there are serious implications to this. But more importantly, I'm making this video to invite all the practitioners across Australia and the healers to join CoVision. We have launched our 2 hubs. We have a lot of work to do to really sensibly think about what we can do to achieve alternatives in order to take back our medical autonomy and our own choice in medicine, which I think is such a critical part of what we're now very much losing, apart from everything else that we're losing as well. But we must take control back in terms of first aid, first responder kits, our knowledge, our understanding, training each other, expanding our knowledge in terms of these issues and how we respond to them. Please join CoVision. I'll also put the link below. I'm also going to put a number of other links too for you to understand the history of eugenics in medical development, so that you understand how experimentation works, and how we've now taken experimentation just out of mental health wards and prisons into the general population. So please understand, this is not happening in a vacuum. This is happening because the whole history of Western medicine is deeply entrenched in eugenics, and you have to understand eugenics, and you have to understand the drivers of psychiatry, of medication, of the birth of the pharmacological companies that parallels that. Pfizer comes from that, is the birthing place in Germany, comes from that real Aryan Puritan ideology. You have to understand where that comes from and why we are actually here. So I'm going to attach a few links as well, so that you start to become educated in terms of the history, okay, of why we are actually now at this point and how much is at stake. Let's take control. Let's plan. Let's together create these solutions. So please join CoVision. We have a wonderful group of practitioners, as I said, and healers. We're working together within the frameworks of the system, of course, to create these solutions. We cannot abdicate our own medical choices to others, to the state, to the pharmacological, to the corporation, to the corpse law, the dead law. We cannot abdicate ourselves to that. So I urge you to really think about that, and follow us closely to find out what else we're doing with all the other upcoming cases, the medical cases that we're tackling as well. Thank you so much.